bang. Okay, so yesterday I had a meeting with Anya and the Swiss lawyers that have taken care about the installment of the Tangle Ecosystem Association. Because like I already said the last time, we were talking with them in the first meeting and described the idea of this GmbH thing. But they again yesterday laid out very clearly how complex and very likely problematic a GmbH would be, especially from the tax side. Yeah, so Switzerland is really something like if you do a GmbH, you are always in the view of the corporate tax entity of Switzerland, and they do see things very different than when you go with the Swiss association thing, which is only taxed on much, let's say, much lower and much less complicated ranges, and also there's normally the local tax authority taking care of most of the things. So it makes much sense to do this. And some info, I think there were some questions around costs. So setting up a Swiss association, actually from the basic thing, is free in Switzerland. But the only thing basically that comes is are the costs for drafting the documents and having the legal and the stuff and the things. So this will be something around 8 to 10,000 Swiss francs. So that's, I don't know, like $8,000 or something like this. Depending on the scope of work. I mean, the lawyers are expensive, but the good thing is um, we have already the setup of the Swiss ecosystem, Tangle Ecosystem Association, and we are basically planning to follow some or most of this setup also for this, I don't know, let's call it Tangle Community Association or whatever we want to call it. But basically, creating a Swiss association for the IOTA and Shimmer community. And and in this thing, we can basically implement the grant committee. And also, what I really like and what I think is a really cool thing, we can implement all kind of other community activities, community things, all kind of stuff. So it's basically it can evolve into a real kind of just an umbrella organization for everything that is related to IOTA and Shimmer community and community work, community events, community whatever. Um, yeah, that's, I think, a good thing. And from time-wise, actually, it will not be possible to install it in December anymore because the Swiss canton, they have basically, because they have quite a backlog, they have basically a block in December where they don't accept new applications. Um, but from a legal perspective, there is like a phase of, they call it, it's like a um, let's say it pre-setup of this association. This actually starts once the founding members come together and decide to found an association. Yeah, so actually it is already then has a kind of a legal status, but in the end it will just take around 6 weeks um, once the process starts with drafting all the documents, doing some registrations and stuff like this. And yeah, 6, maximum 8 weeks. I think the Tangle Ecosystem Association took 8 weeks, but it also was a little bit more complex than what we are doing. So 6 to 8 weeks is something that this whole thing will be finished and set up and ready to operate. Um, what else is important? A Swiss association needs minimum 2 founding members. One of this can be the Tangle Ecosystem Association, as because it's already a Swiss entity, and yeah, somebody else. See, maybe I don't know if maybe we use Mark or me or Antonio or something like this from the community management or from the ecosystem team, or it's Dom is doing it or something. And to operate, you have it's called the Vorstand, kind of like the board of the association. This also needs to be. It could only be one person, but that's kind of not really useful because for making decisions and signing stuff, it's normally done with three members, um, and one of this member needs to be a Swiss citizen. And for that, we will then need to engage with in Switzerland, there are services usually done by notaries by lawyers. Basically, you are paying somebody to be in the papers of this association, and basically they're only local signers, um, but usually um, they are not real board members. They don't have power, let's say like this. They cannot make decisions on their own, and they also are not in a legal state where they would be liable for anything that this Verein is doing. Yeah, so basically they just provide the service of having an address and having a Swiss person. The same thing like you do it when you do it in the Cayman or in the Bahamas or something. Um, they are always bound to any decisions of the real managing persons or the managing entity. And yeah, this costs something around 600 to 800 Swiss francs per month. So these are additional costs that we have to take into account. That's going to be something like $5,000 to $8,000 a year extra. But this is just necessary because we don't have another Swiss person currently, and I think it's better to have it like that.
Hmm.
Um, the the good thing is in the Verein you can really um, basically you can make your own rules. Um, you can of course engage in activities. You can generate some kind of profit. So let's say we put the tokens there inside, and we put the tokens into staking or yield, whatever. Yeah, so, and we generate 8% or 10% blah blah return. Um, this whole thing is no problem. The only important thing is that nothing can go out of the Verein. So whatever kind of profits there will be generated need to stay inside the Verein and need to be used for the purpose that was defined for the Verein. And so if the purpose of the Verein is to support the Shimmer and IOTA ecosystem and support community activities and fund grants, then this is the only thing where what all money that the Verein has or all capital that the Verein has can be used to. So there can be no things like airdropping tokens to the community, giving out whatever rewards or things like this. So everything can only be used for the purpose that is defined by the Verein, which I think
So
is
if
reasonable.
you're
Yeah.
very specific, like if
Mhm.
can you incorporate airdrops into the setup? Or I mean, I'm just
No,
wondering if
because
if no.
the Verein needs to be a non-profit. So
Okay.
um, airdropping, so basically giving capital out to random people, is would very
Okay.
likely not be seen as as fulfilling the purpose of the Verein. Because if the purpose of the Verein would be to make people rich, let's say it like this is how the law very likely would interpret something like this, yeah, because
Hmm.
you're giving free money to somebody. That's basically not a non-profit purpose anymore. Yeah. So
Yeah, I'm just trying
yeah.
to like
Mm.
I just use airdrop as an
Yeah, yeah,
example,
yeah.
but
But whatever
it
kind of
seems a bit like we're kind of
yeah.
I'm just, the concern is being hamstrung or basically what we were dealing with the IF, right? Foundation having zero flexibility in how they
Absolutely not.
use their funds,
Absolutely
right?
not. This
Um,
this was just a real stupid German thing. You can do very likely most. I mean, we could even. I mean, we will have to think about and look into the details. It could very likely even be that if you frame it as a token incentive for something that is good for the ecosystem, like the thing that we are planning to do with the EVM things. Yeah, um, people use the technology, help developing the technology, and things like this. And for this basically development effort, you get a compensation in stuff like this would very likely be possible. But a random, okay, we made $5 million
yeah,
profit
yeah, I
this
understood.
year.
Yeah.
Let's throw it out to all token holders. That's not something that will be
Right.
compliant.
I just think that I think we need to, before we finalize all that, right? We need to really think about all the different ways that we would want to use those funds and be as clever as we can and making sure
Absolutely.
we don't,
Yeah.
paint ourselves into a corner.
Yeah.
Like, for example, maybe a workaround is like, and maybe they'll say this is a way to circumvent the law. I don't know, but if you hand money to another entity that then gives out airdrops, and I'm just using it
Hmm.
as an example because I
Hmm.
can't think of another one. Maybe that would be a way to do it. So you give it to another entity and that entity does something with it
Potentially, the
that,
details I will have to figure
yeah.
out, and we will have to see how much we can. I mean, basically, the like Tangle ecosystem is already they can actually do very very much stuff. Yeah, they can do a lot.
Hmm.
I mean, I know what we have planned, so basically, minimum the same stuff we will be able to do. Um, in regards to taxes, they're also a bit about thinking how this whole thing, because this getting the token into the Verein um, will be, of course, a kind of taxable event. And the question is, of course, okay, when do you want to plan to pay taxes? Um, you have basically two options. You can pay taxes on the value when the Verein receives the tokens. Um, or you receive the tokens, and then every time you give some tokens out, you will have to make this a taxable event. And then basically it's based on the value of how you give the tokens out. My personal feeling, I think it's kind of would be very likely better to make the tax burden in the beginning. So let's say we put the 15% in, um, and currently the price is pretty low. We could think that the activities of the Verein and everything that's going to happen will very likely increase the value of Shimmer. So I think it would be more clever to basically tax the stuff in the beginning, um, because then you will have a much lesser or lower value. Yeah. But they're quite good. They're quite clever in the tech, so they have some pretty good ideas around how this can be done um, optimal. Let's say it like this. What else? A Verein has then basically you can make something in German we call it Ausschüsse, which are kind of it's a committee. So you can install different committees as part of this Verein, and they can also live under their own rules. So the Grand Committee would basically be one Ausschuss of this Verein, working completely on the rules that are established in the framework. Um, and they can have their own budget. They can be pretty independent. And yeah, as long as they work for the purpose of the Verein, everything basically is nice and can be done as we do it. Um, the other good thing is that for the Swiss Verein, you can implement all kind of governance rules and decisions based on real blockchain based votes, yeah, or Tangle based votes. So we can very clearly um, implement rulings that certain things the Verein can only do if the community decides this in a governance vote based on Shimmer tokens or IOTA tokens or whatever we want. So things like closing down the Verein, replacing members of the how is it called, of the board, um, or replacing people in the grant committee. Um, Basically can only be done if there is a community decision via a vote. So the board members basically could be limited in their power to only act on or act with the backing of the community decision. Yeah? And that's pretty nice. And this is going a very good direction to being a real DAO. Because these things can all be written into the statutes of the Verein, and basically everybody has these are legal binding documents then, and you have to follow those stuff. Yeah. And so even if there would be people as a board, um, they cannot make too much crazy stuff or crazy decisions without consent from the community. Yeah, that's the good thing. Yo, what we will do is I'm getting the Satzung or the stuff that it was used by Tangle Ecosystem Association, and Anya and I will look through things and let's say make a first draft based on what was used for Tangle Ecosystem and adopt it basically as much as possible to what we need for the grant committee and for community involvement and stuff like this. Implement these governance voting things. There are some requirements for quorum in Switzerland
Mm.
based on the general things. So let's say in every association you have this, you have it's called a membership. You have a yearly membership meeting where same like in every company where basically the budget for the next year needs to be decided and the board needs to be basically released or established again. And so this membership meeting can also then be based on a governance vote. Let's say it like this. Um, and what did I wanted to say? Yes, this has to be done once a year, and um,
But
yeah.
what was the quorum?
Yes, the quorum. I think it's like for the most decisions, it's a you can mostly do it by yourself. So you will have like a simple majority. Um,
Okay.
but for things like I think let's say shutting down the whole thing or um, replacing board members or spending. I think also for financial stuff, there is sometimes a quorum required of 2/3 of the let's say of the members to vote. Um, but also there is quite some flexibility. We have to all yeah, define these things. It needs to be written down, and then to follow. This is then again not for what the committee would do, because the committee again can make their own rules because the committee is only like a subset of the Verein, and it's just like an yeah. The committee can work completely as we have defined it currently, because anyway they are just getting a budget and then they are working independent on based on the framework that we have designed. Um, this governance stuff is only for the major fine thing. And I think it's pretty cool. So because then Antonio and myself and we from the ecosystem team, we anyway wanted to establish a community organization before we were thinking about doing this Marshall Island DAO, where we can also implement and do some community work stuff. Yeah, and we can then have this legal entity and use it. Yeah, even things like just having some, let's say, putting our Discord out of the hands of the foundation and into the hands of this Verein basically would enable us to do a lot of more interesting and cool things for the community in the Discord. Because then we are not bound by the strict German blah blah regulations anymore. We are then bound
Hmm.
by the regulations of the Swiss Verein. And then you can do some interesting stuff. You could even implement another tip bot in the Discord and things like this. So we have a lot of quite of good ideas
Oh,
that
that'd be neat.
we
Yeah.
anyway wanted to implement, and we always kind of thought about, okay, how can we do this with a legal entity and whatever you want to do. I mean, Antonio is very well informed about all this EU and German regulations, and whenever we have a quite an interesting idea for community engagement, Antonio comes around and says, here I found a regulation in the German law. It's not possible. It's against the statutes of the foundation and blah, 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 blah. And I think with this, we can also do some cool stuff around community, around events, around whatever good community work besides that. And for this, the legal entity is also a pretty cool thing. Yo, this would
Nice.
be the plan, I think.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a common thing. If you look into kind of, there's so many projects. They basically all have done their ecosystem or community organization based on this Swiss fine thing. So it's quite a common thing. We can really work on doing this as much as DAO as possible. Um, and Swiss is pretty well there. So as long as, like I said, as long as you're not generating profits or working on making money with this thing, and you're really doing community work, ecosystem work, you're having a budget and you're using this budget to support the project, um, and you're not using this budget as an investment vehicle or selling stuff to people, then you are really well underway with this fine, and you're very free to not be bothered too much with too much complexity. Yeah, of course you have to pay the tax and stuff like that. This is the usual thing, but it's the same for all of you. I mean, if you have tokens and you have, yeah, a lot of people now have the issue with NFTs and things like this. Yeah, so it's the usual thing. You have to have a proper tax office that does your taxes and takes care that everything is paid, and then the rest you are very likely pretty free to make your own rules for this fine. Yes, this would be something I'll basically start, yeah, tomorrow, and then next week I'll go through the statutes with Anya and see. We also have this, how is it called? Uh, there is there is already kind of a framework for blockchain-based DAO-style associations, created from a couple of other Swiss lawyers. I'll try to implement some of those things, because also there is, I shared it in the channel, I think a week ago. Also, there are the things with the quorum and all the stuff is already laid out, how it needs to be following the Swiss law. And so I'll try to grab stuff from there, and then we'll see how we're going to set this up. And like I said, the thing how TEA was founded is already very well, and we can very likely take a lot of those statutes and those wordings from these documents already, and then adjust it to community and to grant review stuff here. Yeah.
Cool,
Jo,
cool, cool.
good, good, good. So that's basically what I wanted to tell everybody. Um, questions?
Um, no, I mean, basically everything else as far as voting and all that kind of stuff, that's all dependent upon Firefly right now, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Um, let's say it like this. I think we don't need to rush.
Yeah, it wouldn't
uh,
matter if we rush, is what.
yeah, I mean we can rush. We just can't. We just can't vote.
We
Looks like
can't rush.
this. Yes. I mean the cool thing is what Firefly. I mean they are now building something really really cool, which is actually which is pretty awesome. And I was just hoping that we it would kind of already be implemented earlier, but now they implement
Hmm.
all this generic voting. So basically, they're making Firefly into a voting machine for the community, and everybody can basically do all kind of voting based on tokens, and then later on based on NFTs, based on native assets, whatever. It's going to be really cool for all those. I mean, we have already people that created their own tokens, and they have a little bit created their own communities, and you can then use Firefly for all those stuff, and you're not relying on the IOTA Foundation anymore. Everybody can create proposals, can create votes, just upload it to your nodes, and even the uploading to the nodes will be made super simple with a Firefly front end, basically, where you not need a lot of technical knowledge or coding stuff to upload voting proposals and events to your nodes and have your community and your token holders vote on that. So that's pretty cool. It just turns out that there's quite a lot of scope around to do, yeah, because we have, I mean, our protocol is quite complex with all these different unlock and outlock conditions.
Hmm.
You have all these time locks, conditional sendings, NFT. Um, Everything kind of needs to be thought through, because then you have an edge case. Okay, what do you do if somebody has has re- starts voting, receives an NFT, and then wants to send funds to another address or wants to create a token, and needs a storage deposit for this, and all these little steps need to be taken into account and implemented user friendly, so that it's not a complete mess when you want to do something else during your voting. And I think this is a little bit of the complexity in the moment where they are stuck with it, and naja, what to do. We can't force it.
Dope, creep.
Yup. Yeah, cool. I mean, what else? Grant reviewer and stuff like this. So, as we have said last time, we will stop the application process on Friday. Um, I have informed all candidates about the change of the rule that only one person per team can move into the next phase, into phase two. Um,
Hmm.
so basically, I know already that let's say the content creators, they have already decided that only one person from them will continue to run. Um, I expect something similar from Sooniverse. I got already some responses from there, not from everybody yet. And so then this would be also clarified. Um, phase two very likely going to start then on Monday. Or let's see, maybe whatever Wednesday or something like this, so we can make a little bit noise again in the community. We're going to do some tweets and some outreach that now it's time to for everybody basically to choose their one preferred committee lead, and there are 4 candidates for the grant reviewer. And yeah, then we're going to have a poll in phase two in the forum, and then with this, we will just use whatever the outcome is. Then once Firefly is ready. Yep, this is the thing.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. That's from my side everything I think I wanted to tell. Anyone, anything, or should we wrap it up today?
I think we
Ev
can wrap it up, and you need
yeah,
to. You're still under the
yeah, I'm
weather, so
still
get
a
some
bit
rest.
sick,
Yeah.
so I'm getting back to bed. And
Yeah.
yeah, let's make some noise next week. We're going to have some interesting stuff happening around with the grant committee again, and maybe I got already some useful information around the Swiss association stuff. And so we just move on step by step.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice one. Have a good
All
day,
right.
good evening, and see you again on Tuesday.
See ya.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you.